I am officially moved into my brand new home studio. Glad to be back making YouTube videos again, and it's only right to do one more in-depth studio tour. But before we do so, here's how my first week in Philadelphia went.
We were just in high school, we weren't just friends. Caught up in a love song, then reality kicked in. Two students playing card games, talking about the old days where we were 12 and playing Minecraft. I wish we'd go back to our old ways.
If you haven't watched my first studio tour, I highly suggest clicking the link right here, whichever side it is, because a lot that we discussed in this video I've already mentioned in that video. And just like the last video, let's start with room decor. As you can tell, this place is huge. And that's because I was fortunate enough to be given the entire basement out of an entire house full of musicians. And you're probably also thinking, there's not a lot of stuff in here. And you are right. I very much wanted to keep this space as minimal as possible while still keeping high functionality. The minimal design helps me have less distractions while still keeping me inspired day in and day out. The acoustic panels we talked about in depth in my last video are still here, and if you want to know the quick rundown on how I made it, they're simply just 2x4s with Rockwool insulation and fabric. However, a huge thing I didn't talk about in my last video were my guitars. Guitar rig speedrun. Ibanez PC12 Mahogany acoustic guitar. Vintage Ibanez RBM with Floyd Rose bridge. Squire P Bass. Fender semi-hollow body Thinline Telecaster. Ibanez GIO starter pack guitar. And last but not least, a Vox AC15 VR hybrid tube amp. Okay, now that that's out the way, let's talk about the rack. The first thing on here is a Furman M-8LX power conditioner. The best way to describe why I have a power conditioner, and I heard this from somebody else, is that a power conditioner is like insurance for your audio gear. Because the last thing you want is for Thor to be pissed one day and have a lightning strike right outside your house, destroying all of your thousands of dollars worth of gear. Do yourself a favor and invest in a really good power conditioner, because it may just save you one day. The next thing in the rack that we spoke about in the last video is a Focusrite 18i20. When I was talking about this interface in my last video, I was kind of saying how overkill it is because I was working out of an apartment where I couldn't really record any drums. But I am thanking my younger self, because now that I'm in this new place, I am more than capable to start tracking drums again. On top of that, the Focusrite acts as a powerhouse for all of my audio gear, so I can start doing outboard mixing. If at any point you want to start mixing with outboard gear, this is probably the easiest and cheapest way to do so. Right below my interface is probably one of the most rare and unique pieces that I've ever had. This is called the Focusrite Green Channel Strip. I forgot where I found this piece, maybe it was at a Guitar Center or at a local mom and pop audio store, but when I did my research, I found out that it was a preamp from the 90s. And apparently, after doing some research on Reverb and other places, this preamp goes for a good amount of money. But unfortunately, I barely use it these days because it needs to be serviced. Something's wrong with the EQ or the compressor and it just craps out all the time. But when this channel strip would work, oh my god, the EQs on it are magnificent. If any of you know any places where I can get this fixed, please let me know in the comments down below. Up next is an Art Dual MP preamp. And honestly, I believe that this is another rare piece now. You've probably seen its younger brother in a lot of home studios, but it's hard to find these pieces in rack mounts. And the only reason why I have this preamp is because I used to work with a Digi 002, and in order to use the line inputs on that, you needed preamps. And I am so glad that I did get these because I use them all the time. The Art Dual MP is a cheap tube preamp, and when I put this on a mix bus or even on a master chain, it tends to round out the sound and the mids really nicely. It's always good to try different preamps on your mixes because you never know what flavor it could give you. And 9 times out of 10, this unit is followed up with the unit right below it, which is a Behringer Multicomp. This was my very first piece of outboard gear, and it's still being used heavily to this day. Honestly, compressing is all that it does. It doesn't really color the sound or anything, and right now I more or less just use it as a mix bus compressor or an overall master bus compressor. I got this compressor for maybe less than $100 at Guitar Center, and if you want to start doing outboard mixing, I highly suggest getting a compressor like this for your first piece. Right below that is one of my most favorite pieces and one of the most confusing and basic pieces that a lot of home studios end up having. This is a Behringer Ultrapatch Pro. All this simply is a patch bay, and you can Google or YouTube how to use it. Because God knows I won't do it. The last thing I'll talk about here is my power amp, and it's nothing too fancy. It's just a Sony power amp that powers my passive monitors. Yes, I am working with passive monitors. Oh yeah, and the reel-to-reel right now is out of service, and it's more or less for decoration right now. Do not tell the TVA because they might steal it and use it for their facility. But hidden right next to it is a power supply. But for what, you may ask? A segue, of course. A segue into microphones. For real though, the power supply is actually for this bad boy, which is a Warm Audio WA47. A beautifully built piece modeled by the Telefunken 47, and before this, I was always working on an AT2020 Audio Technica, which I am using right now to film this video. And keep in mind, for 7 years, I'd even go as far as to say 8 years, I was using that Audio Technica 2020. This is a well-deserved upgrade that I felt that I needed to have. That being said, this is a microphone that you probably don't need to have, but it's good to treat yourself once in a while. And what's a studio without a Shure SM57? And in fact, I got two of them. I got the classic Shure BETA58A, and if you're recording any kind of drum and any type of kick drum, this is the best microphone that you could get. I also have a beater Shure PGA 57, and honestly, I thought this mic was going to be booty, but I use this all the time. You'd probably see this on a lot of my Instagram posts if I'm singing or doing whatever it is. I believe this mic was actually $50 or $60, and I couldn't have been happier with the purchase. And last on my microphones, I have this Sterling, I don't even know. Sterling Audio, oh shit. Sterling Audio S50 Class A FET. It comes in a large diaphragm, and it also comes with a small diaphragm. And because I used to use these as overheads, I got myself two of them. And honestly, I've used these on other things besides overheads, like stereo acoustic guitar. I'd probably use them for pianos or something if I had one. It's always just great to have a stereo pair of anything. I mean, that's also why I got two 57s, just in case I had to do anything with stereo pair. I'd feel bad if I didn't mention this, but I think every producer has a broken microphone somewhere too. This still works, but okay, let's finish this tour once and for all. Quick sidebar, if you want to know about my desk, I really spoke about that in my last video. So as I've been saying this entire video, please be sure to watch that video. The first thing you'll notice on my desk is a Machine Micro by Native Instruments, and a quick word from the wise. Do not buy this unit used. If you buy this unit used, you cannot use it with any of the Machine 2 software. The way that I'm using it is solely as a MIDI controller, but honestly, that's only 10% of the entire functionality. If I were you, save the pennies and get it brand new or get the most updated version. Quick sidebar, thank you to all the homies who bought this piece. If you want to know about that, link is in the description down below. The next thing on my desk is a MIDI controller, and the MIDI controller is a Yamaha PSR-333. And a very important note about this MIDI controller is that I bought it for $80 6 years ago. This keyboard is a keyboard that I would buy for a 10-year-old to start learning piano. And I'm letting you guys know now that it is my favorite MIDI controller that I have ever tried out, that I've ever owned. Don't overthink your MIDI controller purchase, guys. As I said earlier, I'm working with passive studio monitors. These are the Behringer Truths B2030P. If you don't know the difference between passive and active monitors basically need a power amp externally in order to have them work. Whereas active monitors have those power amps built inside of the actual speaker. The reason why I ended up getting these is because years ago, well, I was a broke boy. And my dad had a few of these power amps laying around, so I figured I could save a couple bucks by getting passive monitors that everyone said were pretty good. I've had these monitors for years, I love them, I mix and produce on them day in and day out, and I really don't see myself changing them anytime soon. And last but not least, everything is running on a Dell XPS all-in-one PC. My DAW of choice, of course, is Pro Tools, and don't let TikTok know that because they will skin me alive. And that's the tour. I hope in some way the last 2 studio tours were actually helpful for you. This being my 4th home studio that I've ever built out for myself, I've really learned how to put things together for the best functionality and the best inspiration that can ever be achieved, at the very least for me. Hopefully after watching these videos, you can start to maneuver your studio in a way that gives you the same type of inspiration and functionality that I achieve in this studio every single day. Thank you guys for watching, and before you go, I have a free gift for you. For weeks now, I have been pushing my very first free loop pack called Dream Boy. It contains 8 free loops that can make your beats or productions or songwriting sound very dreamy. So as a thank you for constantly watching these videos, you can download that in the link in the description down below. As always, be sure to like, subscribe, and comment down below any questions that you may have about this space or any comments that you have about my studio. And if I got roasted in the comments about this room being really echoey, I just moved. Let me be. Regardless if you roast me in the comments for that, or regardless if you're watching this and this is your first time being here, I just want you to know that I love you. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you guys next time.